You were at you came to Facebook through FriendFeed.
Yeah, that's right. I started a much less successful social network, and but it's actually been really great because a lot of the stuff that we announced at F8, to me, really realized a lot of the vision that we originally had with FriendFeed too, which is that every service is better when it's social, and with the really strong developer ecosystem and really amazing product that is Facebook, I really feel like we're really on that path to enable like all the services I use to be social.
Right.
So it's been really great. I actually think that like the reason we chose to sell our company to Facebook was how much I felt like our small company and Facebook aligned and kind of our vision of where the world is going.
Some have said that FriendFeed at its sort of original and its trajectory of where it was going, and as you mentioned, a lot of that got into certainly the Open Graph and other the timeline announcements as part of F8. 2 weeks ago, was it? 2 or 3 weeks ago?
Lost track of time.
Anyways, it was last month, yeah, right? September.
Yeah, it was insane.
That's similar to Google+. What do you make of Google+?
You know, to me, it's interesting because in many ways, I think it's pretty validating for a lot of what we've been at Facebook trying to sort of convince the world of, which is that products are better when they're social. You know, a product that where you can see your friend's activity and get serendipitous, discovery and get recommendations from the people you know is better. And one of the most interesting things when I hearing Vic and Sergey talk about Google Plus is it's not just a destination, but really an integration into a variety of Google properties. And to me, that's seems like a really good strategy. When we talk to our partners, we talk about social isn't just like a thing you build. It's really a product design philosophy. Right. And when I look at a lot of the great music services that launched with us at F8, it's not just like you tacked on a share button. It's when you turn on Spotify or RDO or a service like that, the main screen is here's what your friends are listening to. And that serendipity and social context is the core of the experience. And so I think it's really interesting and fun for conferences like this to have some compelling competition to talk about. But more like broadly, I think it's really neat that like more and more services that we use will have that social context. I think it's a really good user experience and something we're really excited about.
Do you think that you guys and Google are going to get over it and start sharing?
Sharing? What do you mean?
Well, you're the one that's about sharing. What I mean by that...
There's a connotation to your question. I'm just trying to
Well, yeah, that's fair. What I mean is, it seems at some point, there was a lot of discussion throughout the conference about this is not a zero-sum game, which is usually what people say when they're competing and they want to be nice. But at some point, as I asked Vic, and I was really being serious, but I got this look from Sergey, like, are you out of your mind? I would have loved to have used Facebook Connect to populate my Google Plus circles. And vice versa, perhaps some people would like to use, their circles to populate your lists and super lists and other things that you come out with. Is there a point at which data might move seamlessly between the platforms because isn't that data that is ours as people and it should be simple to sort of say, hey, I want the best of what's at Facebook, I want to integrate it over here at Google Plus or at Twitter or at some unknown service that bursts on the scene tomorrow?
Yeah, I think data portability is a really, obviously,
I wasn't looking for that, but I'll take it.
No, it's a really good question. Data portability is interesting because it's very easy in the context of single user services. So if I have my photos in a service, where I've just uploaded my photos to store them in the cloud. The argument of, I should be able to download those and bring them somewhere else is a very simple argument. Clearly, you own your own data.
Right.
I think the complex part of data portability is at the intersection of these social features. And, the ones that's gotten a fair amount of attention is contact information on a service like Facebook. If I put something in my address book in an email product, it's clearly mine. I generated that. If I put my phone number on Facebook and had a privacy setting saying these are the people who can see my phone number, what are your rights with that information? I think we're friends on Facebook. it's not totally obvious because, and that position, you didn't put that number in there, I did. Should you have the ability to take it and put it in a service that might have a different privacy setting than the one I had? And you end up in these weird sort of social situations where we could indirectly create a disincentive for people to put this information on Facebook if they knew that it could leave their profile and make it out to a bunch of different places with very different contexts and privacy settings. We've tried to find balances for this. We have a service called Download Your Data where you can download all the photos and status updates and everything you put on Facebook in a big zip file.
Right.
One of the things that came up when we rolled that out was, why doesn't it include my friends' email addresses? And it was a legitimate issue, and it was all because of this very complex social nuance. So recently, we added the ability where you can check a box in your privacy settings that says, let my friends export my email address. And now all of your friends who have set that setting, their email addresses are in Download Your Data. I think it's not perfect, but we are iteratively trying to figure out where that balance is between preserving one user's privacy and enabling another user's data portability. And I don't think it's always a black and white answer. I'm not saying we've always chosen the exact right part of that gray area, but I do think it's a gray area.
Yeah. On LinkedIn, I can download every one of my LinkedIn contacts with all of their information. So LinkedIn has taken a different position than Facebook has. I think it's great that you've added that feature which allows you to check that box, but I do think it's probably also fair to say that almost nobody ever goes to find that box and either check it or uncheck it, right?
Well, actually, the majority of people on Facebook have, modified their privacy settings. I think there's a sort of a meme that goes around saying, oh, no one knows about the defaults or no one knows about the privacy settings.
Well, you have integrated them into the user interface in the last few...
Yeah, and although this particular, I think in general, I actually think that the people who use Facebook a lot are very, very aware of privacy settings. If you talk to a college student, they know exactly what their parents can see and what their parents can't see. They know exactly what their ex-girlfriend or ex-boyfriend can see and what their ex-boyfriend and girlfriend can't see. I think we really, our philosophy around these privacy settings is not to bury them. Our philosophy is to put those controls in front of you as much as possible. I think as our service has grown, there's a lot of increasing scrutiny on how we deal with privacy, and I think it's probably appropriate given how many people depend on our service. And our response to that is that if we can make your privacy controls so transparent that you are immediately comfortable with all the decisions you're making on the service, it will naturally lead to people sharing more with the privacy settings that they're most comfortable with.
Right.
And that's really our philosophy. And so I'm not saying it's been perfect in all cases, but certainly most people, modify their privacy on Facebook, and it's something we're proud of, and we're trying to make those controls as accessible and sort of at your fingertips as possible.
One of the things you announced at F8 that I don't think really got any headlines that you and I spoke of earlier that I find interesting, and I look forward to checking out. I haven't checked it out on my own page yet, is activity logs.
Yeah.
Can you explain, because I'm not sure, how many of you are aware of what activity logs are? So there you have it.
We have two.
Three. Two or three, four.
Yeah, so activity log is a part of the new timeline, which is a new version of our profile that will be rolling out in the next few weeks. Activity log is essentially a private page that's the back end of your timeline. It's every single activity or piece of content that you shared on Facebook for all time. And you can browse it, delete it, change the privacy settings on it, and really navigate by time. And it's designed so that you can have a single place on Facebook where you see every single piece of information attached to your profile and where you can delete it and modify the privacy on it. It really goes back to what I was saying before, is that we're launching lots of features like Open Graph that enable people to share in different ways than they had previously. And I think that our philosophy is that if we can give people the level of granularity of control over that experience as much as possible, the more these products will succeed. Because people need to trust this service to rely on it and use it. And Activity Log's really great. I mean, you can go in for a job interview and quickly browse back to those photos of yourself in college and change the privacy on the keg stand photos in a very efficient way. And a lot of that stuff was it wasn't like it wasn't there before. It just wasn't as accessible and easy.
Right.
And I think that making it really accessible will really change the psychology around it, where you really feel like you have control over the whole experience.
Right, right.
So.
I want to give people a chance to ask questions, because this is a shortened discussion, unfortunately. So if you have any, come up to the microphone while we continue. I wanted to ask you, with the timeline shift, and it's a significant one in terms of the richness and the sort of narrative, power of this timeline, which is quite distinct from the, blue and white blocks, that we've gotten very familiar with. Do you see different kinds of advertising springing up because the format of the page is changing so dramatically that perhaps those little boxes, the engagement ad boxes, might change as well?
I mean, honestly, when we were developing Timeline, it was really a product about creating the experience where you could have all your life on one page, and I really focused on the design of that experience. As you said, it was a huge departure from our design philosophy that we had previously on Facebook.
Right.
So honestly, we were really focused on self-expression and the open graph and the new class of apps that can work within Timeline, and not, really, it wasn't really about advertising. I don't really think we have anything new there. So, yeah, sorry, there's nothing.
All right.
It wasn't really the focus of the product.
When we spoke with Sean 2 days ago, he mentioned a couple of things about the service, and that's what I love about talking with Sean, is that he doesn't actually work there anymore, so he can say anything on his mind. One of the things he did say was that if he had any concern, it was that power users may not find Facebook as fulfilling a platform as, for example, Twitter or even Google+, because of the ability to control things and so on. Do you pay attention to quote-unquote power users on Facebook?
Very much so. I actually think in many ways the original group of people who used Facebook, basically, people in college and right out of college, where young people where their social lives were really the core part of their lives at that point for obvious reasons, are very much our power users. They use Facebook the most and they care the most about these controls. And we spend a lot of time thinking about them because they are really the core of the Facebook experience. They're the reason why your mom uses Facebook is because you used it, and because your first friend who invited you used it is the reason you used it. You have to focus on that core of the power users to have a social service work. I think the fundamental challenge, I struggle with this a lot, is like the balance between sort of addressing power users and their need for really nuanced controls and features, and just my drive to make our products simple. And I think finding that balance is something that I worry we've gone towards complexity sometimes too much. But that said, I'm really happy with some of the features that are trying to address this that we've released recently. I think our friend list feature has been really well regarded. It's not only just friend lists where you can list your friends, but smart lists that will automatically make friend lists from your people who work at the same company as you or go to the same school as you. And we also release Subscribe, which is sort of the other form of power user you were talking about, who are just trying to reach a broad audience. Right. And our newsfeed is really quite good at finding you the most engaging content. We spend a lot of time tuning that to give you a very good set of content. And the folks who have turned on Subscribe have seen just really unprecedented levels of engagement on their posts. And I think over time, I'm really bullish on that product. I think that it just has the potential to reach all 800 million people who use Facebook and reach a really broad audience with a lot of the engagement tools we've learned a lot about as we've developed Facebook. So I still think it's a really big challenge, though. As a product grows, I worry about the cruft it grows, and the constant refactoring is a part of it, and I don't think it's an easy problem. So. Yeah.
You are doing a lot.
Yeah, we are.
We have a question here, and I think it's going to have to be our only one.
Okay. Ian Thompson from The Register. You came from Friend Feed. We're seeing MySpace dying on its backside right now. There seems to be a curve going with social networks where they sort of go along fairly slowly, come up, and then peak and drop away. What's to stop that happening to Facebook?
Well, I think Facebook is just a much more important service than just sort of a social network. I mean, it really is a service that, especially now, I use with most of the applications I use on a daily basis. From the music services I listen to the news sites I visit, to the games that I play, are all integrated with Facebook. A lot of devices that I use, including my television, are integrated with Facebook. When I like play in my Xbox, I can post like the image of my car crashing to Facebook. And our vision is that like social isn't just a destination. It's, it means about personalization, it means identity, and it means like discovery of apps. And our hope is that, over time we can make Facebook really a service that a large ecosystem of companies and developers, depend on to drive their personalization and discovery, that makes those apps more successful and also makes Facebook just a more compelling destination over time. And I think from the beginning, Mark has been really focused on Facebook not as just a destination, but as a platform, and that's sort of been the differentiating part of our company for a long time and something that we're really focused on.
Well, unfortunately, we've run out of time, but thank you very much, Bret, for coming and sitting down with me for a little bit. And
thank you for having me.
And we hope to have you back. Take care.